all of last year, and looks like it's going to lead into this year as well. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a vast number of casualties all over the world, and with the dark times seem to be unending, it has led to more and more people looking to the heavens and looking for answers not only within themselves but also towards others at this time of isolation. Closure of businesses, loss of jobs, and strained relations among family members are just some of the problems that all of us have grappled with in some form or the other. With all of us have found a way of dealing with these vagaries, we do not realize that several aspects of Indian philosophy are very practical and can be used to address these very issues that are hurting us so much today. We intend to bring to you through this unique video conference program those features of our spiritual heritage that will enable you to introspect, look into the very depths of your being, and embark on a process of self discovery. We are delighted to have with us today Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee. Thank you, sir. A professional with over 35 years of experience across a myriad of sectors, be it government, the private sector, or the social sector space. His rich experience has made him a true motivational speaker. Last year, as a part of his various outreach programs and with some time to contemplate, he brings to us today the teachings of the Gita, a practical guide to deal with the stresses of our daily life. Before I hand it over to him, I request all the participants to feel free to type their questions in the chat box, which we will attempt to take up as many as we can in the last 15 minutes of the session. Welcome, Dr. Chatterjee. I now hand it over to you.
Thank you, Romira ji, and a very, very warm welcome to all of those who have logged in to this session today. Namaste and very warm blessings and good wishes to you at this time of crisis, which all of us have been facing for quite some time now. I was hoping that through the teachings of the Gita, in which I have been immersed now for some time, I would be able to reach out to all those of you who are facing difficulties, particularly in the business arena, and of course in our own personal lives. And what better to turn to than the Bhagwad Gita, a guide not just to any particular religion or to any particular group of people or to any particular sect, but to all humanity, to all human beings. These are actually timeless teachings, 5,200 years ago. That's the time differential we're looking at. It's a long treatise. Yes, it has 700 verses, 1,400 lines, and 18 chapters. The language is Sanskrit, and many of us find it difficult, therefore, to access. Uh, when I started looking at the Gita, I also saw that there were many, many interpretations in many languages. So many of them were so scholarly, so difficult to access, and they were about as abstruse and abstract as you can possibly get. All of this made it very difficult for the practical, everyday individual to look at the Gita, to understand its message, to hear or see what it's all about. The intrinsic beauty of the epic is that its knowledge applies universally. It applies to every one of us. And as we go along the presentation that I have before you today, you will see how you as a person, you as a business, you as an enterprise can connect with it without absolutely having to worry. And I'll request then the first of the slides to come up before the audience here. It's called the Gita Overview. Slide number 2, please. Yes. So what we're trying to say here is that there is no religion specific to the Gita. It is universal in its language, in its content, and what it does say is that it is a way of life. That is all that it advocates. And you will see how universal that message is, how applicable to every one of you that message is. Next, please. In the next slide, I've always also wondered when I used to log into some of the Gita sessions. So much was taken for granted. It was as though, the audience already understood the background, already knew what it was all about. And there are today many people who are logging in and trying to understand what is this about? Can we start at the beginning? There are also foreigners who are logging in and who would want to know or be inquisitive about why there is so much of involvement with the Gita. Why is it so important? Why is it such an epic? Why do people turn to it repeatedly? And this is something that is particularly relevant today at times of depression and doom and gloom, and all of us having coming through this pandemic, which is like some kind of hydra-headed monster. You lop off one head, another head comes up. So all of this up and down has given us a very hard time. We're still all going through it, suffering a lot. And therefore, it is important for us to see that was this kind of challenge meant before? And that is why the Gita and the particular event with which it is associated is so allegorical. This is a time when Arjuna, the mighty warrior, is facing his enemies, and he asks his guru, Lord Krishna, to drive the chariot to the center of the battlefield in Kurukshetra, so that he can see who are lined up against him, who his enemies are. And when he sees these enemies lined up against him, he lapses into a state of absolute negativity, anxiety, distress, and helplessness, much like what we feel today. And it is on seeing his disciple in this very unsteady and very difficult state that Krishna begins counseling his disciple, trying to re energize, rejuvenate, and get Arjuna to do what really is his duty. And the amazing part of all this is that when Krishna starts speaking and you get into the Gita, you will forget that Krishna is actually speaking just to Arjuna. Once you start following the Gita, it becomes a conversation between Sri Krishna and you. Everything that Krishna says is as relevant today as it was back then. Or as we all know, the externals of our world may well change, but the inner core of our humanity and our civilization is always remaining eternal. Next slide, please. Yes, the pandemic, the damage it has inflicted on all our businesses, our livelihoods, our professions, and has affected our minds and our physical selves so badly. So we see here that Arjuna is poised to fight. He is in the middle of the battlefield. His chariot is there, his guru is there, but he hesitates. Why does he do this? Because he sees lined up against him his friends, his teachers, his relatives, his seniors, people whom he revered, he respected, he looked up to, people who taught him his skills. And he genuinely believes that to fight and kill them would be to commit a grievous sin. He therefore lays down his bow, the Gandiva, and turns to Krishna, his guru and mentor. It is from here that Krishna begins his motivational sermon, which all of us can turn to without exception and find inspiration. What follows, therefore, is a conversation in which Krishna imparts to Arjuna a reasoned justification for doing battle with his enemies. You will see that as Arjuna questions and Krishna answers, the whole of life's most important issues are addressed. We can liken Arjuna's helplessness to the way we felt and still feel as the pandemic hits below our belts, incapacitates us, emasculates us, discourages us. Next, please. And so we come to the first set of shlokas that I've selected for you today. Shlokas that set the tone of what we are about to discover through the exciting journey that lies ahead. What does the shloka say? Arjuna Uvacha, that is, Arjuna says, Drishtavevam Swajanam Krishna, Yuyutsum Samupastitam, Sidanti Mama Gatrani, Mukham Cha Parishushyati, Vepatushcha Sharire Me, Romahashcha Cha Jayate, Gandivam Sanskrate Hastat, Vakchaiva Parihastyate, Nacha Shat Vasthatum Brahmativa cha me manah. Arjuna is filled with self-doubt, and in his anguish he beseeches the Lord, O Krishna, seeing my own kinsmen arrayed for battle and intent on killing each other, my limbs are giving way, my mouth is drying up, my whole body shudders, my hair is standing on end, my bow the Gandhi is slipping from my hand, my skin is burning all over. My mind is in quandary. This is the state of helplessness to which Arjuna is reduced. Next, please. This slide is very much the same as asking what Arjuna is asking. Questions we are asking ourselves. These verses that I read out to you show how disturbed Arjuna was upon witnessing the scene confronting his eyes. He was asking himself the very questions that each one of us is asking in the midst of our present crisis. The basic questions of life. What can I do to keep calm? What shall I do to keep from being overwhelmed by the negativity and pessimism that I see all around me? And then how can I turn within myself to find the strength to sustain me through this time of despondency and gloom? And it is from here, Rumiraji, and all my listeners and viewers, that Krishna's answers to each of Arjun's queries begin to flow, and you will see how beautifully the rhythm is maintained. It's like a clear, pellucid stream, enlightening, guiding, leading, urging, and inspiring. In this short session, perhaps I cannot give you all of the Gita, that's impossible, but I have selected portions from it that are so relevant to every one of us today. So let's move to the next slide. First and foremost, are we going to let negativity and gloom engulf us? No. And if we do not want to do that, then what's the first thing we must maintain? Calm and equanimity in the face of crisis. And not just this crisis. All of us know that in life we have ups and downs. Crisis will come, crisis will go. Success will come, success will go. For everything is just that. Never perennial, but always here and there. So let me turn to this shloka from that classic conversation. And this more or less reflects what we should be doing. Yam hi na vyathayante te purusham purushashabha sama dukha sukham dhiram somritat vaya kalpate. O Arjuna, the noblest among humans, that person who is affected neither by happiness nor by distress, accepts pleasure and pain alike, remains steady in both, is capable of attaining the state of equilibrium. So, what is the Lord telling each of us here? He is saying that that person who retains his composure equally in the face of pleasure and pain, treats pain and pleasure similarly, is neither too excited nor too perturbed by either. In some sense, is detached from both. That person is possessed of the gift of equanimity. Such a person will remain balanced in all circumstances. His mind will not be influenced by objects or material possessions. He will perceive likes and dislikes, and indeed all circumstances, as equal and will act accordingly. How can we relate this message of the Gita to our depressing business climate? And so we turn to the next of our slides, which is titled, in fact, The Depressing Business Climate. Next slide, please. Yes. Now, in this one, we see how allegorical and how metaphorical this scene on the battlefield is, how relevant it is to our own time. And I looked at how the father of our nation, Gandhiji, how he looked at the Gita. And it's very important to see how he faced so many crises in his life, time after time after time, when isolation, despondency, depression, fighting against the British regime, fighting against his detractors, how much it would have been hard for him to gather all his strength and re-energize himself. And this is what he says in 1925. I find a solace in the Bhagwad Gita. When disappointment stares me in the face and I'm all alone, I see not a ray of light, I go back to the Bhagavad Gita. And I find a verse here and a verse there, and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming tragedies. And my life has been full of them. If they have left no visible, no real scar on me, I owe it to the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And if the father of the nation could find that, imagine how relevant it is for each one of us. So therefore, it is no wonder that the Gita has now come to be seen as a source of inspiration for business enterprises and, in fact, a guide to management. In so many management schools now, many of the management practitioners and experts are repeatedly turning to the Gita and, in fact, teaching them to their students. And in a sense, the modern business environment, under what we now call competitive capitalism, looks pretty much like a ruthless battlefield. So much competition, so many challenges out there. I acknowledge that starting a new business, running an existing one, needs courage and enterprising, sometimes even an animal spirit, and pride in doing it. The timid cannot start business enterprises nor even run them. When the chips are down, owners, employees, and all stakeholders need to hang tight and meet the challenge head on. That is what improving business morale is all about. So, to our next slide. Struggles with adversity and setback. That is the title of our next slide. What does it say here? What can I give you as a verse? And I looked very intently at the Gita to ask myself, what is the one verse that I can give you that you can turn to? This is in chapter 2. This is shloka 3. It says, Yabhyam masma kamaha partha naitat vayupapadhyate shudram hridaya taurbalyam tyaktvotishth parantapa. Stoop not to faint-heartedness, O son of Kunti. It does not befit you. Shirk off this petty weakness of spirit and arise. Scorch your foes and make ready to act. How inspirational this verse is. If you recite it in the morning or any time that you want to, how much of self-belief can you generate within yourself? And what is especially inspiring for us as we see our jobs at stake, our enterprises at serious risk, is that the Gita is a clarion call to action, to get yourselves together and act. For the answer lies not in giving in to a fatalistic frame of mind or in abject surrender. That perhaps is all too easy. But in understanding that in life there will always be the rough and the smooth, the enterprising will always find these ups and downs, but they meet them head on with equanimity and patience. And so, on to our next slide, which is about equanimity and how do we find it? Through an element of detachment. So, the title of the next slide is Equanimity and Detachment. Here I come to two shlokas, chapter 2, shloka 38, and chapter 2, shloka 48. Each of these are absolutely relevant to the situation that we face today. An important message of the Gita is this: treat joy and sorrow, profit and loss, success and failure with equipoise. Whether you are an employee, whether you are a business person, whether you are a leader, whether you are an entrepreneur, struggle will always be a part of what you are doing. And so the Gita says, Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yudhaya yujasva naivam papam vapsyasi. Treating happiness and sorrow, gain and loss, victory and defeat with equanimity. Make ready for battle, for then you will be prepared. And how is this possible? The Gita advocates through a sense of some detachment. Because even while actively engaged in work, it helps one to gain an evenness of mind against the ups and downs, successes, and failures. And so, this is Shlok 48 from chapter 2. Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sang Tyaktava Dhananjay Siddha Siddhyo Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Perform your actions, abandoning attachment and viewing success and failure with an even mind, for balance and equanimity are the true essence of life. How beautifully spoken and how beautifully enunciated. Let's turn then to the next one, which talks about fortitude and enthusiasm in the face of the downslide and how much of downslide we have been seeing. Remember one thing though, and this the Gita is very, very insistent about. Detachment does not mean non seriousness, lack of commitment, lack of enthusiasm. The Gita is, in fact, an inspiration for you to work better and even with greater dexterity and commitment. I found this in Shloka 50, chapter 2. What does it say? Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrite tasmadhyogaya yujaswa yoga karmasu kaushalam. Possessed of wisdom and equanimity, devote yourself to Karma Yoga, for Karma Yoga represents skillfulness, competence, and dexterity in action. In fact, the whole of chapter 2 is about karma and the Karma Yogi. Live your life in the real world, prove yourself in the real world. Take the teachings of the Gita. When you need to struggle, do that. When you're in a successful mode, enjoy it. But at all times, remember to treat success and failure with a certain amount of equanimity. There is no question of the Gita, therefore, accepting indifference to work. It is, in fact, rather a call to action. Krishna reminds Arjuna that he is in this world to take action. What do we see? Very often that self-doubt, worry, anxiety are the results not of action, but of mental turbulence, compulsive overthinking, and what we might call analysis paralysis. We tend to analyze so much and we see so much of the dark side that we hesitate to go forward. When you fail to act and get caught up in this endless loop, then nothing is accomplished. If you act, however, you will either accomplish your goals or fall short, but you will learn from that experience. So this lesson, this shloka tells us not just to sit on the sidelines of life and wonder, but to take selfless action and own the consequences. And so to our next slide, which is bounce back from business adversity and trauma. Next slide, please. The title is Yes, there we have it. So I have used this term constructive detachment, and I believe that in the whole concept of Nishkam Karma, what the Gita is telling us is not complete detachment, but constructive detachment. This is what the Gita is telling us, which is a key both to success and survival. We know that an entrepreneur, whether an industrialist, even a farmer, has to accept risks and uncertainties. These are unavoidable facts of life, and we need to be ready to face them with boldness and confidence. None of us can say that we will go through an entire lifetime and face no challenges, no downsides, no difficulties. They are a part of all of our lives every other day. So even if a business goes into liquidation, business person should not lose cool or equipoise, but be ready, on the other hand, to reincarnate himself or herself within this God-given life. And here, this shloka, shloka 22 from chapter 2, is so inspirational. Vasansi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinhati naro parani yatha sharirani vihaya jirna nyanyani sanyati navani dehi. Even as a man casts off worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so the spirit of the Atma casts off worn out bodies and enters into others which are new. Now, this verse has been interpreted in many, many ways and by many, many thinkers. The one which I'm most fond of is that we can apply this verse to situations of failure, liquidation, difficulties of a business enterprise. An entrepreneur should not lose his or her cool in such situations, but be ready to learn from experience and, if required, start anew. Professor Mahadevan, whom I deeply respect, interprets this verse as teaching the need to discard obsolete ideas and experiment with new ones. If they have not stood you in good stead in the past, look for something new and inspirational to go to. It is the mantra of what we might call innovation, if necessary, even disruptive innovation. Our scriptures, remember, and this is important for all business persons, have accepted the goal of earning wealth as a valid human goal. Earning wealth per se is not regarded as a sin, but is actually encouraged. It is considered as the duty of a householder to earn, take care of family, and be hospitable and to help others. To the next slide then, which I have called Eliminate the Aura of Negativity. How do we do this? These are my own interpretations, and I think they might stand you well when you reflect and think, what is it that we can do? What is it that each one of us, whether we are employers, whether we are employees, whether we are business creators, whether we are leaders, wherever we are, what is it that we can do within our businesses? Do not become a super spreader of negativity. We have seen enough of those super spreaders of the COVID pandemic. One rotten apple is enough to spoil the whole basket of fruits. Never has that saying been truer. Therefore, disengage from people who spew nothing but negative thoughts. And don't we find them all around us, in our families, in our friends, in our colleagues, everywhere, in the office, in the home, wherever we go. In all the adverse events of the economic turndown and the industry slowdown, look back in retrospect and try perhaps to recall, at least for a while, not how much things were bad, but all the positives that also it may have brought. And this for CII is important. How do members interact with each other? Can we talk to fellow members, office bearers from CII and industry chambers to keep track of new opportunities? Log into workshops, see what they are doing. There are so many. You are not alone in the problem that you are facing. There are so many with similar or maybe even bigger problems than yours. Look around. And then when you interact with your colleagues, you will find there are suggestions from them that may well work for you. Remember, when one door closes, another opens. All around us now, we have begun to see green shoots. Try and identify the ones most relevant to you. If in your own company you are in a senior leadership position, know that business, of course, is always an up and down proposition. It is how you handle crisis situations that will establish your true credentials. If you are an employee, demonstrate your resourceful now when your organization needs you the most. But most of all, do not lapse into a morose and helpless state as Arjun did in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Most importantly, and this is why I'm here today to help you, reach out to the Gita to shore up your confidence. It is your best friend through thick and through thin. How will you do this? This was for me really important. I found it difficult, hard, and I want it to be a pleasant experience for all of you out there who have little time, who want to access it quickly, understand its principal teachings, imbibe them, and keep them, internalize them. How can we do this? Does it devote or need a lot of time, a lot of energy? Do we need to learn new things? No, it is really very, very simple. I know that the word toolkit has many pejorative things today. This is not the Greta Thunberg toolkit. This is our own very friendly, very useful, very beautiful Gita toolkit. Something that all of us can use and something that is important just for us and maybe then for our nation. Yes, it is in Sanskrit. The Gita is. It is long, yes. Translations and commentaries are most often by very learned people, which tend to be highly philosophical and abstract. Yes. So the question for the average person like you and me is this: how do I access the vast treasure trove of the Gita? Do I have to learn Sanskrit? How can I make sense from all the hard to digest translations and thick tomes of philosophical writings? The answer, my friends, is very simple. No, you do not have to learn Sanskrit, nor need you plod through all this heavy literature that is so often confusing and obscure. The basic teachings of the Gita are in reality very easy to understand and to follow. Today, We live in a world where you can look at so many videos that are easily available and in any language of your choice. Many informative websites provide you with all the help you need. So to begin with, start listening to a few videos of your choice, such as the set of seven, and I've given you one helpful website that you might like to log on to, that have been prepared both in English and in Hindi and in many other languages. Choose a few of the shlokas that you find most inspiring. I've given you some today, which is a foretaste. You could start with these once in a day, just once. If every one of you I know are extremely busy, there's so much happening around us. But just that one time in a day, whether it's the early morning, the late night, the even at lunchtime, any time that you have for yourself, just reserve 5 minutes. That is your own time, lone time, your time. And when you have those 5 minutes, what can you do with them? So, to our next. The shlokas that you like. This I used to do very often and still do. I store them in my phone. They're easily accessible, and many recitations of them are also now available. You can record them, so you can either have the text in front of you or you can have the recording in front of you to listen. Remember that when you enunciate, when you speak the shloka, you don't have to be perfectionist. Just do it because you want to. Whether the pronunciation is good, bad, doesn't matter. Just begin. When you hear it, repeat it, say it to yourself, internalize and think, right? This shloka, after a while, will begin to sound so rhythmic, so sweet, so effulgent. You will love to recite it. You will own it and the message that it gives you. Initially, I too had problems thinking these words in the shloka, there's so much sandhi, it's so difficult to pronounce. How do I break it up? No, don't be deterred. Even when they are there in front of you, break them up into small syllables, say them slowly. And after a while, after the first 3, 4, 5 days, you will see how much repetition helps, how beautiful it sounds. Hear others who say them on your video watch, and you will love it. So make these 5 minutes your own Gita time, your own time. Slowly but audibly recite the shlokas to yourself. Pronounce each syllable clearly. It doesn't have to match up with some great teacher or some great Swami. It doesn't have to be that. Just don't worry, just do it. They may be hard to read and pronounce at first sight, but in a very little while, when you watch the videos, hear other people's pronunciations, you will love to do it. And it will bring great joy and satisfaction because you will find the recitation very lyrical, very rhythmic, very soothing, very relaxing. You will just love the experience. So powerful will you find the effect, and this I always do. You will look forward to the whole day to those 5 minutes of your alone Gita time. Gradually, you move from one shloka to another to another. And whether it's 5 or 6 or 3 or 2 or 10, it just doesn't matter. Choose the shloka that best suits your mood, recite it lovingly, and you will find so much inspiration. Then, of course, you can increase the time, you can delve deeper, that's really up to you. But your own morale will be lifted, and with that, morale of the business or the industry in which you are. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, for that wonderful introduction to the Gita. When I came in to start to moderate this session, I also had a million things on my mind being an entrepreneur. But trust me, just listening to you speak, has given me a whole, what should I say, a shot of energy, uh, with half an hour of Gita time with you. And so have all our attendees. They've been, sending me a flurry of questions. So I'll try and do as much justice as I can to take on as many as I can. What you said, Dr. Chatterjee, is so true. It's that feeling of equanimity that we all, look to achieve in our lives. And I think it's a constant struggle to maintain that external calm, even when everything inside you is in turmoil. And, like you said, just spending that time probably helps you become a stronger person within. And it's only then that you can reach out and solve the problems of what you're facing outside and spread that positive energy to the others as well. So
Yes, Ravi.
the first question that we have is, Dr. Chatterjee, we all of us, whether we are entrepreneurs or we are employees, we go to work thinking, okay, I hope, that my job is going to stay till the end of the month. As an entrepreneur, you feel, okay, I hope that I don't have to lay off any people and I can, find a solution. So, in the midst of all this flux, how do we increase the positivity amongst our employees?
Well, on a lighter note, by perhaps exposing them to sessions such as these.
Absolutely.
Because when they listen to others and know that others are listening, when there are people who are speaking positively about the world around them, who are saying you can draw inspiration from things that are already there, things you don't need to invent, things you don't have to dream up on your own. In times of challenge, in times when times are difficult, what can you turn to? So, one, of course, is that if you are an employer, then you must reach out to your employees. I know that you will say to them, times are challenging. They have to, at times, even take a salary cut or hang on to their jobs or face difficulties and crisis. But they know, as well as you do, that times are hard. This is a time for belt tightening. And they would go along with you. Employees are very aware, very savvy these days. Younger employees, particularly, so tuned into the real world and so able to take what comes to them, rough or smooth. So, if we breed in them that sense of loyalty, if we tell them that we are as one, our enterprise is one, see, this is a time when you need to outperform, because when the time is tough, it is the tough who really get going. So you reach out to them to give their best. You hold them together in times of crisis. And let me then also look at this equanimity part with which you started your this thing and give you perhaps one more shloka that will help many of us to focus and to concentrate. And this is shloka 15 in chapter 2. And it says, Yam hi na vyatha yante te purusham purusharshabha sama dukha sukham dhiram somritatvaya kalpate. O Arjuna, says the Lord, the noblest among humans, that person who is affected neither by happiness nor by distress, accepts pleasure and pain alike, remains steady in both, is capable of attaining the state of equilibrium.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. Another very interesting question, Dr. Chatterjee. While all of us are looking for that one Krishna in our lives who we can turn to and who can fill us with all the positive energy, how do we, on our own, develop self-belief and confidence?
Well, the Gita has a message for us here too. And to that extent, we've all been told that if you want to develop your self belief, develop your confidence, you need to be able to tell yourselves that you cannot switch off, you cannot distance yourself from reality. When times are hard, and we know these times are really hard, think positively and spread positivity, not the other way around. Instill in others along with yourself. Because in so much of all of this, we need to reach out as others reach out to us. And if all the conversation is about how hard it is, what we've done, this one was down, that one was down, this business is down, all around us is bad, then we come to a situation where we just chat amongst ourselves about how everything is so difficult. But in all of this, if we can tell ourselves some positive stories, if we can reach out to each other and say, hey, look, I turned to the Gita and I found these inspirational shlokas there. Instead of talking and wasting all of this time in deciding what's so bad, let's recite something that is inspirational. Let's tell ourselves, hey, can we do better? And good times are ahead. This time will also pass. Believe in yourselves. Go through this crisis, because then, sure as the night is the night, the sun will also rise and the day will be the day. So let me give you that very wonderful verse from the Gita, without which I think no Gita session is really complete. And this is one of the ones that are very often recited, so I'll do it again. And it says, Karmanye vadika raste ma phaleshu kadachana. So many of us reach out to this sloka. Ma karma phala hetur bhurma te sangostava karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties. Don't shirk them, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Nishkam karma. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the result of your activities, but also never be attached to inaction. It is in fact a call for action. That's what the Gita is all about.
Wonderful, Dr. Chatterjee. Another thing that all of us, and I know it's been debated across various forums about working from home, the pros and cons, pros being lots of women have now been able to join the workforce, those who may have thought of dropping out just because they have, the advantage of being able to work from home. Having said that, many of us, Dr. Chatterjee, have gotten used to going out. We have a persona when we go out, whether it's to work or interact with people. Even children when they go to school have a different persona and aura. All of that now seems, in a way, to be coming down to four walls within which maybe you feel restricted, even though you may have made a workstation at home. Your kids may have done their school stations, in their rooms. While some of us have dealt with it, like you said, we talk to people. Some of us, are still grappling with a lot of mental stress, which we are not able to probably express, or we feel hesitant to express, given the surroundings that we are in. And India, per se, is not very open to the ideas of, and in the nascent stages of accepting depression as a serious terminology. How do such people utilize the positivity of the Gita, like you have just highlighted in the last couple of minutes?
Ramiraji, what you're saying is so true, and we see this all around us. Families have been split, too much friction within households, in office spaces, so much to worry us, depress us, take the energy out of us. And many of us have relapsed, I mean, not relapsed, but lapsed into a sense, complete morbidity. And that has happened because I think to some extent there is also a level of isolationism. You feel isolated. You feel as though, I can't handle this challenge. I can't take this on. There's not enough strength in me because all of it looks so bleak. And at the end of the day, all of us who are in this depressive mode find some sense of inadequacy deep within us. There is this belief that, I just don't have the resources, the armory, the capacity, the capability, the skills, the mental strength to be able to get out of this crisis. I have this problem or that problem vis-a-vis my partner, my child, my elder. Maybe I'm aged, maybe I'm young but disabled, lost my job, my business is going down. All of these things look as though, as you rightly said, the walls are closing in on us. And I think, I'm no psychologist, but many have talked to me, and in many of my discourses, I've spoken to them. There is this feeling that I, as a person, can't take it anymore. The water has gone above my neck. So here is where you need to identify that problem early. like with everything else, those in the family, those who are friends, those whom we chat with, those whom we reach out to, those whom we're in touch with, must prevent that person from being isolated, from indulging in, a feeling of, I can't do it anymore. Encouragement is what you need. And there, some element of a little bit of philosophy to try to understand that, yes, this is a body in which I'm imprisoned. This is a situation in which I am. But there is something called timelessness. This time will also pass. Bring within yourself the energy. See how time treats you. And here again, one more shloka for you about how our bodies, our souls go from one to the other. And it says here, Na jayate mriyate va kadachi. Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. Ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The soul is neither born nor does it ever die. Nor having once existed, does it ever cease to be. The soul is without birth, eternal, immortal, ageless. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. If this eternal truth is known to all of us, these times will also pass.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chatterjee, for your time and the wonderful session that you have, given to all of us. I think we are all going to go back feeling a little happier, a little more positive, and feel a little more strength inside to face whatever that each of us have to. A lot of the participants have asked for the YouTube link, Dr. Chatterjee, which you shared in your presentation. I want to share with the participants that you will be getting an email post the session is over, which will have the links of that YouTube which Dr. Chatterjee had shared during his presentation. Thank you to CII once again for organizing this wonderful session. I hope we see more of such sessions with Dr. Chatterjee. It will help all of us feel a little more positive, give ourselves, time to breathe, and also maybe reach out and help others smile. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Chatterjee. Have a wonderful day ahead. Namaskar to everyone.